Hey there, everybody. This is Kenny. Welcome back to another edition of the Leading from the Middle podcast. This is the podcast for middle managers who want to develop themselves, develop their teams, and improve their results. I am so grateful that you decided to stop and listen and check us out. I got to talk to a great leader. She is a leader who helps other leaders communicate with impact. Ulrike Seminati joined me on the podcast today. Ulrike really goes into great detail about change, but specifically, how do you help leaders who just are naturally resistant to change? And if you're naturally resistant to change as a leader, you really need to listen to this and really pick up the hints and tips that she's dropping here. She will also talk about how do you gain trust and buy-in through great communication skills. You don't want to miss a second of this. Let's get at it.
This episode is brought to you by Kitcaster. Kitcaster books you on top podcasts. How do funded startup founders attract prospects and talent? Podcast interviews. How do entrepreneurs with exits find new deals? Podcast interviews. How do C-suite execs differentiate in crowded markets? Podcast interviews. Kitcaster books you on top podcasts. Click the link in the show notes for a special offer. Celebrate good conversation.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of the Leading from the Middle podcast. I'm so glad you're here, but in a little bit, you're going to be really glad that you're here. I have a great leader that is going to drop some great knowledge on you today about a couple of topics that she's passionate about, she has great experience in, and she's been proven to be very, very successful in those. So without further ado, this is the leader that helps other leaders communicate with impact. Ulrike Seminati has joined me today. Ulrike, it is so great to connect with you today. How are you doing?
I'm fine, perfectly fine. It's so great to be here. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Well, I want to jump right in because I really want to get as much as I can and from your knowledge and experience, but I definitely want to get your backstory. And there's got to be some things in there that has led you to be really passionate about leadership in general, but particularly communicating powerfully, but also change, which is so needed today. So walk us through your backstory and what led you to be so passionate about these topics.
So I have worked as a corporate communications leader for 23 years, and I've climbed up the whole hierarchy ladder. So from junior manager, middle management, obviously, and then also to the C-level. And when I was in this very top position and also across the whole journey, I realized how important it really is to communicate from human to human, and that actually that is what's missing most in companies. I mean, we communicate obviously every day, but do we do it rightly? And I have met so many leaders in my career, no matter at which level, who really struggle with communication. It's just not their cup of tea, or they believe actually that they are not good communicators and never will be. I have seen that at CEO levels, even at C levels, and any other area in the middle management. And oftentimes we find us there as leaders because we are the greatest experts. And then leading people actually comes in as a task that, well, turns out to be rather complicated sometimes, especially when people resist to what we propose them to do, or especially when we come in with change projects, for example, or transformation. And so my passion really came from, wow, this creates so much uncomfortability of these leaders. You know, they feel like, oh my God, I'm really out of my comfort zone all the time with that. I'm stressed because of that. And because they are stressed, they don't appear authentic anymore, because they might not be authentic anymore. And all this human connection gets lost when we just leave our true self at the doorstep to the office instead of bringing it in. And I think there's a lot to do when it comes to people communicating with others, and especially leaders communicating with their teams, because, well, the whole secret of getting of bringing people to taking action, of getting into action mode, lies in good communication. There's nothing else in between. It's always communication, and many people just shy away from it. And I saw a lot of frustration, mistrust happening because leaders communicate less than they could, because they're not comfortable with it. And that creates so much of a feeling of not being safe in this company, because that people think there's a hidden agenda. The next big thing will be dropped on them. Who knows what that will be? And
Mm-hmm.
all of these emotions which we have out there, I think it's important that we tackle them and that we seriously change and shift the way how we see communication from our own perspective as leaders, and also as an organization when it comes to helping our leaders, especially the middle management leaders who are squeezed between the top and their teams. Especially they have a very difficult role to play, and especially helping them on how to communicate what's coming from the top to their teams. And that is, I think, the biggest art in middle management.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. That is so awesome. I want to go back. I loved everything you said. Um, I, I want to go back to, you said that you should bring your authentic self in the door with you. And that's still a myth, right? A lot of folks think, okay, my work personality, my real personality has got to be different. What was a turning point for you where you felt comfortable bringing your authentic self into the workspace?
Yeah, well, I realized that only after my corporate career, I needed to step out to realize how much effort I had put into maintain this corporate persona that I believed was necessary. And I think I would have made my career anyway, or even maybe better, at least for sure, with a much better feeling for myself, because I would have appreciated at least what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I mean, how can you appreciate your achievements when you have done it out of a persona that isn't you?
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
yeah, so the thing is, how can you reward yourself, be proud of yourself when another persona, your corporate persona, has done the job? You will never be happy. And so I think it is very important to understand that. And for me, it only came when I stepped out of the corporate world and looked at it from a distance. I needed to have that, like, call it meta position, yeah, to get out of that. And to realize, oh my God, what a loss of energy and of joy, actually. And what I've done, that for me, it was really about learning to embrace who I am with also all the flaws, because I'm a perfectionist. If you're a perfectionist, it's even worse. Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's
For
the
sure.
nature of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm permanently consciously doing that, rewarding me for the whatever 80 or 90% that I achieve, because as a perfectionist, it's never 100% in my eyes. But it's a difference of rewarding me for that and being proud of that, and not thinking, oh, I have to be different. And when I realized, or I had just the courage to try that out, to be more of myself without preparing too much, with
Yeah.
being more spontaneous, not overthinking too much, just letting me saying things out of the blue, kind of.
Yeah.
I realized that the connection that I make with any audience or with my clients when I do trainings as well was totally different. A huge shift from having an okay effect to communicating with impact, actually, to really
Yeah.
have a connection and really be compelling, because it came out of a place that we call the heart and
Yeah.
not just the head. And that makes the whole difference with authenticity. That's the relationship to it.
It really does. And it's so amazing, everything you just said, and so true these days. And so I want to start with change first, and then I really want to tie communication in with that. I hear from leaders that really struggle when they hire someone that really just from their background, and it's so great that you brought up your authentic self, but from their authentic background, they really, really struggle with change. Maybe it's, from their upbringing or something like that. Um, and so let's hit the leaders first. What are some advice that you give leaders that maybe this ingrained with them, that they just really, really struggle with change, but they've got to be the change agents? How do we get past that?
Hmm. So the first thing is being very honest with yourself and
Yes.
finding out what is your relationship with that change goal. And the first thing you see if you're resistant is, I don't like it. I hate it, maybe even. I don't want that. Yeah, that's the first emotional reaction. But then the question is, okay, what are my motivational drivers? I usually work with the motivational drivers of the limbic brain. So they're very, very intuitive. And people who resist change usually have what's called a balance profile. It has nothing to do with work-life balance. It's called the balance profile. And balance profiles have a strong, strong need for security, safety, continuity. And often they see themselves, and I think that's the first struggle, that They see themselves, they're not being appropriate these days anymore, as everything's about agility and change, which is the
Yeah.
exact opposite of
Yeah.
continuity and stability.
Yeah.
And so the first thing they feel is like, I'm not appropriate. I'm not good enough. So again, this trap of getting into another persona to look like as if you have a growth mindset and you're agile. Whereas I
Right.
think instead of losing energy of playing that role and appearing like someone who embraces the change, better think of your qualities in the change and think of, okay, as that profile, I have qualities like any other profile. I have qualities like being reliable. I can plan. I can help us not to make these failures that we can avoid. Some failures are good, but some we can maybe avoid. I am a person who can really track that change and make sure that we somehow go through it in the smoothest possible way, but we still go through it. And for that, you as a middle management leader, first of all, you have to motivate yourself, and that is the most difficult thing. What I say to leaders each time is, you don't look at the change as it is communicated to you. It's certainly communicated to you as a growth opportunity, or we will have a great performance, or we make 20% more money, or I don't know what. Yeah, these kind of things that come from the top. That's their view on things. They are interested in these goals. Also, from a personality style, probably they're more interested than you are. But if you're not, you cannot be interested with your heart in a growth goal that's not yours really. But
Yeah.
maybe you find something else. Maybe you might find, okay, I embrace this change project. I invest myself in this change project because for me, an underlying goal would be to help my team to get through it in the most stable way, because I know that's important for them as well. Or I want to make sure that if it's about restructuring is the worst, yeah, that out of my 40 people, 30 of them, at least 30 of them get through, and not only 20. I will do my very best for that. I motivate myself for the goals that are compelling to me, that are maybe not at all the same that those that are compelling to your hierarchy. And by this, as a first step, you need to motivate yourself by something that is compelling to you. Can I create more business continuity in my team over time, not in the moment where the change is announced, but maybe afterwards? Can we as a team position ourselves as not being the resistance, yeah, like we are right now, let's say, but
Right.
being
Right.
like more the gatekeepers of success? And
Yes.
it
Yeah.
depends how you see yourself. Do you see yourself as someone who's the opponent of it? Or do you see yourself as, hey, no, I'm rather a gatekeeper? And I think the hierarchies above need to accept that too, that profiles like that, who resist to change, can be really used as wonderful gatekeepers for success, not for resistance.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's a question of perspective. It's a question how we position ourselves if others don't do it for us, and it's very unlikely that others do it for us. So we have to
Yeah.
do it for ourselves.
Yeah. You totally flipped the script there. I love how you said a gatekeeper for success and not for resistance. And we often just think that, those people that are, man, why are we doing this? Or what's this change about? How's it going to benefit me? We think that it's resistance, but we don't take that time and effort. Like you walk through some great steps on changing that. So I want to now tie in the communication piece because it gets so important. And I think that that's where, because you worked in the C-level, that's where I think sometimes the hierarchy misses the boat a little bit. They're desperate, right? They know, hey, we've got to change for whatever. We need more revenue, more customers, or whatever the case may be. And then the change just goes out without the communication piece. And so you've got that leader that now you've gotten on board. What are some really great hints and tips? And you teach some great ones, so I can't wait to hear them. On now communicating and getting people on board to be those, those gatekeepers of change for you.
Yeah. So first of all, I think a middle manager, the main role of a middle manager is to translate corporate goals into team goals.
Wow. Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's for me the role. Yeah, it's not
Yeah.
about being an expert. Well, that's great if you're one, obviously, but
Yeah.
you're a translator. That's the job.
That's great.
And what comes from the top is never adapted to your team. Never, because they're really you already as a middle manager are on a different level, a different way of thinking than the guys up there somewhere in the ivory tower. Sometimes we have that feeling, yeah. And that ivory tower, I know how it feels. You're really disconnected, actually, very quickly.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
crazy. But it's what's coming from the top comes from a specific point of view, and the point of view that is communicated usually as a middle management person, you think I have to somehow convey it in a very similar way to my teams. You might have even received an FAQ from your communications department. I did that for 20 years. I did delivering FAQs to leaders. I mean, it's not stupid. It helps them for certain things, obviously, but understanding an FAQ is only a help, maybe content-wise in a certain way. But what you really need to do when you are the translator, you come from that perspective, you hear words up there, words like what I said before and what you also said, more customers, performance, growth, agility, everything, all of that has to do with a big ambition as well. If you are a profile who embraces and loves these terms, who is very ambitious, very status-driven, power-driven, well, fine, then you will adhere to this kind of wording. But like 70% of the world's population, 70, is a balanced profile. That means 70% of the world's population, so very likely that 3 out of 4 in your team, something like that, are not like the people who shape these words and will not like these words. They will not like a word like performance. It doesn't sound positive to them. It sounds like a threat, another stressful threat that it's put on their shoulders that they have to carry through. And knowing this, you need to change the wording. You first need to think, who is in my team? I mean, you might have people who love status, power, ambition, and all of that. If that's the case, great, you can take it as it is, but it's very unlikely. You will for sure have people who are very security, stability oriented, the reliable ones usually as well, who carry things then through till the end once they get started. And that is the point. How do I get them started?
Yeah.
And for this, you need to give them, you need to think like a marketing manager. What's in it for them? So what I said first of all, need to understand what's in it for you. And if you are already change resistant, you need to get this clarity. What can be in it for me, which is not the messaging from the top. There's something else maybe I can do to buy in myself first. And then you think, what's in it for them? Might be similar, might be very different from you. But when it comes to, just helping with some simple tools, think about changing the dictionary. Instead of saying, it's a growth opportunity, we will increase our performance, we will outperform the competition. Wow, outperform the competition. That's one of these things of the other profiles. I love that, yeah?
Yeah.
You might not. Instead of saying that, you might want to say, okay, we are in really shaky times. I know, I admit that. I'm maybe myself uncomfortable with it too. But what we can do is that when we go through this change, once we have launched it, we can create more business continuity over time. In the midterm, we can contribute to have a more stable environment. You need to come up with things which you can never really promise who can actually.
Yeah.
But you at least think about, how can we shape this process differently? And even ask the people. Usually the resistant ones, we have tendency to park them aside and to think the more I speak to them, the more they come with me. But the more you speak with the wrong words, the less they come with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. Ask them what they can do, because they have ideas, and build on their strengths. Say, hey, I know that you can make great plans. I know that plans usually in change are thrown overboard here and there. That's happening for sure. And you know that. But nonetheless, if we do not make plans, it will be chaos right from the start. So can you help? Can you help to make this change less chaotic, less threatening, less ambiguous maybe as well? Can you help with your expertise? And by this, you bring them in as they are. You do not try to make them an agile persona or a growth mindset type of persona. You say, hey, I know you're great in looking into details. You're detail oriented, you're analytical, you're organized. Can you help us to create more continuity in this project or more stability with your strengths? And you will see that the people buy in a totally different way, because they are seen as the human being they really are.
Yes.
They are valued for the strengths they have and not disvalued because they feel like not appropriate. And then they have an intrinsic motivation, because they think, when I contribute with that, I can maybe truly create more stability, which helps me to go on with this change project, despite the fact that I do not like change. And that's the angle that people have to take.
Yeah, I loved everything. It's so I love the way you laid it out. And as you were talking, I was thinking how much effort um it takes to properly communicate, period, but then to really properly communicate change. I want to ask how, because you talk about this in a great way also. Where does trust and buy-in fall into really communicating properly, and especially when it comes to change?
They're super important,
Yes,
obviously.
no
But,
doubt.
but trust and buy-in for me are two different dimensions. Trust is for me very strongly related to authenticity. Because when you show your true
Yeah,
personality, when you also show that you are not perfectly fine with the change, because it would be lying to people, they will feel that. So leaders often shy away from admitting that they also have what they see as weaknesses. I think there is no such thing actually, because it's just being human. It's just having emotions and it's normal. And as said, the majority is like that, having not so
yeah,
great emotions about change. So why
yeah,
not say, hey, I also struggled to embrace it. I found a way for myself to do it. Maybe you want to share even how how you turned your head around this and how you think, that's how I can embrace this change.
hmm,
Maybe not, you don't have to absolutely, but as long as you're authentic and also admitting that for you it's not like, wow, that's the big deal, we go for it, I love it. If you don't, that's the first thing to build trust. And this
yeah,
is then how also team members can open up more and also let go of this kind of fake persona they might think they need to show and be a bit more open. And if you have this open discussion, I think people should not be afraid of then emotions coming up or frustrations or things like that, because if they are not expressed or addressed, they will be there anyway, and they will
yeah,
even more grow under the
yeah,
surface. So having this courage, to bring it to the surface, and maybe you have a discussion where everybody says, I hate that, it's again the fifth time this year, and or why not? I mean, give them an hour to just kind of get it out. And once you have this more stable, how to say, this more honest collaboration that comes when people are able to express how they feel about a situation, then you can say, hey, let's now turn it around. Yeah. Now we go away from the victim mode, because we are in a victim mode right now, like,
yeah,
oh, it's on us. Yeah. You can
yeah,
blame it for a few minutes, why not? But then let's go out of that. How can we together do something out of that fits our needs, but that also fulfills the goals of the company? Let's brainstorm. Let's build on our strengths.
yeah.
There is the full difference. And then you get this buy-in, because people feel also empowered, but empowered as the person they are, and not forced into competencies they actually haven't.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. I love it. I love it. I want to ask two more on communication. And I was thinking about learning styles. And I know for myself, I was in my 20s when the MTV generation came along, and I became much more of a visual learner then. Where do learning styles fit in? How in tune do especially middle managers need to be with what's the learning styles of their people as they're communicating change and even other things?
I think the learning styles are different for sure for everybody. But I
Hmm.
think what you really need to take care of, and what is a learning style that is for everybody more powerful than other learning styles, is that they experience something together.
Wow. Yes.
I think we stay often very too long in the theory, no matter if it's a written theory or a workshop made theory, which is always better because there's co-creation or something, if it's auditive or visual or whatever. But I
Yeah.
think saying, hey guys, let's try something out together. Let's experience it. And let's debrief on that as well. That we have mutual feedback, how we went through that, what was good for us, what was difficult for us, what will we do differently in the next try. And I think that is the best learning style you can get, because at the same time, you and your people get into action mode as well. So you start moving already.
Yeah.
I think that
Yeah.
is very helpful, because most of the
Yeah.
times we have a conceptual fear of things. And it's conceptual as long as we are not in the situation. I mean, when you go to the dentist 2 weeks before, you have conceptual fear, even if you're not there. How many hours
No
of your life
doubt.
are you
No doubt.
wasting
Yes.
thinking of it? Yeah.
No doubt.
It's a bit
No
the
doubt.
same with change or something which we don't want to have.
Yeah.
Just get into action mode by experiencing little steps, not overwhelming things. Yeah, just little things, and help yourself as a team, by discussing, by debriefing on it. And I
Yeah.
think this is how we can really, and team can then grow together without feeling like, oh, I have to run behind a crazy growth goal which is not mine.
That is so brilliant. That I mean, and it takes a little bit off of the plate of, oh my gosh, I got to learn. Everybody's learning stuff. But if you experience everything, that encompasses everything. I love that. That is so awesome. So our Gen Zers that have grown up now on social media, where does that come into play? Because that's a whole different way of communicating. Do you recommend that leaders do communicate sometimes through social media, or uh, what's that? Is that a factor even in the way that they should communicate?
I don't think so. I don't think that the leader, the direct leader, should or has to communicate through social media with them in a certain sense. I don't think so. I don't think that they need it. I think that it's even more outstanding and more unique and a special relationship if the leader really focuses on a very personal relationship, because I think that is very important, that they are heard and seen as a person, as their personality, as who they are and what they are motivated by, maybe what their bigger goals or aspirations are as well. Looking more than with people of another generation, looking more into what is really the human being behind the role. Because they have a much bigger need to be seen as that human being, because also they express themselves in any shapes and forms on social media and are kind of used to doing that. But at the same time, I think it makes a difference if as a leader you go beyond that, let's say, rather superficial level, what you see on social media, which is always a bit of appearing in a certain way, into something that feels just more honest and more genuine as such. I think that's a big difference with the Gen Z generations.
Yeah, absolutely. And if everything you've talked about for these last 25 minutes, if the leader's following that, they'll be able to pull that out, of their new hire that could be their first job, and they're just not used to, looking each other in the eye and speaking. They're used to, texting and everything like that. Ulrike, this has been amazing. Thank you so much. You gave us so much in this time that is such great advice for leaders today. I have one last business question, and I want to leave time for you to talk about how folks can connect with you. Um, Communication skills in the virtual world. How does that come into play? Is there one or two other tips that you have for folks that have a full virtual team?
Yes, I mean, for that one, I think first thing is to understand that when you have a virtual team or any virtual meeting, a big amount of nonverbal communication cues are lost. They don't exist, actually.
Yes. Yeah.
And that is a big issue.
Yes.
Yes. So actually, normally our brain is made to see the full human being. When we get an information, we see all the nonverbal cues, the mimics, the voice, the whole body language, and we don't have that online, which is why we are so uncomfortable online, and which is why it's so difficult to create true, strong connections if you only see this person online. So that's first thing to understand why. So to counter this, you need to be as present as possible online. Means no black screen, camera on, and very important, you look onto the screen where your camera is. Many people have two screens, and because they explain some data or something, they look at the other screen.
Yeah.
And I think because people know why they look at that other screen, it's not an issue.
Right.
It is.
Yeah.
Our heart, our instincts permanently shout, I'm rejected, I'm rejected, I'm rejected. He or she's not listening. They reject me. They're not listening. That's what our brain makes as an interpretation every millisecond, again and again and again and again. And even though our rational mind understands why this person is not looking right now, we have this huge insecurity. So be present as a leader as much as you can. And the same thing goes with presentations. They take the whole screen. I mean, leave a little mini window with your face. So
yes.
when you present, and you have to sometimes, obviously, if there are tables or I don't know, Excel sheets to share, do that. But as soon as sometimes a discussion goes off on a slide, which everybody has seen now, you don't need to look at that slide anymore. So stop sharing as often as you can to go back on screen with your face and make it visible, have light, be big enough. People need to see your mimics.
Yeah.
Sorry. And that is really the difference.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's great. Those are some great tips. And I can't tell you how many I've been on where it's just, They're looking, man, who is there somebody else in the room? Where they look, even though, okay, we've got two screens. I've got one over here and I haven't looked at it once, you're so right. Amazing, amazing advice. How can people connect and work with you, Ulrike?
So they can find me under my website, ulrikeseminati.com.
Okay. Okay.
And
Perfect.
they can also find me under leadingchangeconversations.com, because I'm launching a new podcast, which is called Leading Change Conversations, where I will give my guests a case study around leading change or bringing people on board for change. And where we try to find some solutions around that.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. All right. That'll all be in the notes. That's fantastic. And I'll be on the lookout for it myself. I want to thank you so much for your time, for being so generous with your time today, and for being so open and sharing so much. This has been amazing, and so many folks will get so much from your teaching, and I hope they pick it up and connect with you more.
Thank you, Kenny, for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. So we'll leave it there, folks. This has been Kenny and Ulrike with the Leading from the Middle podcast. We'll talk to you real soon.